I understand a lot of times when we come to school, there are things that happen outside of school that affects our behavior, that affects our minds, and that it affects our emotions while we're at school. And so when we come to school, our teachers, our classmates, sometimes they're the ones who have to deal with what happens to us outside of school, right? So what I'm going to need y'all to do right here, I'm going to need y'all to hold up the Sherwood 5. Yeah, I was paying attention. Yeah, I see what worked. Yeah, there we go. I just want to say this. I spent my own money to come here. Mr. Wallace reached out to me, and he thought that it would be a good idea if I come talk to the kids out here in Memphis, because the children in Memphis pretty much are dealing with what we're dealing with in Texas. Most of you guys don't know that just here recently, the United States of America, do we have any 12-year-olds in here, any 11-year-olds? Sherwood 5. I want y'all to pay very, very close attention, because what I'm about to say is very important. It is very, very important. Up until 2016, the United States of America would take a 12-year-old kid and send him into prison with life without parole, with no possibility of ever getting out, being free again. So when I found that out, I started doing research. How is it that we can be the land of the free and the home of the brave, and we'll take a 12-year-old kid and send them away forever? I realized that there was 2 other countries that would do that. That was North Korea and Sudan. And the reason I became aware of that is because I was a child at 12 years old making wrong choices and decisions. Now most of y'all down here, I'm going to talk over y'all head for a minute. But y'all will get it one day. Whatever happened to you, and I want y'all to listen to me. Whatever has happened to you, good or bad, it's not your fault. I'm going to repeat that again, because a lot of y'all ain't heard this before. Whatever has happened to you, good or bad, at this point in your life, it's not your fault. As children, things happen that we see happen, and we tend to blame ourselves. And I'm telling you, it's not your fault, whatever it is. So I'm going to back up and tell you who I am again. I'm Mr. Charleston White. I'm from Fort Worth, Texas. I run an organization that's called Hype About Hype Youth Outreach. And HYPE is an acronym for Helping Young People Excel. I used to travel around the country speaking at prestigious college universities, going in and out of juvenile facilities, talking to children who have made wrong choices. And the reason I did that is because when I was 14 years old, me and 3 of my friends decided to skip school and go to the mall and steal jackets from the mall. In the process of us stealing those jackets and running out of the mall, there was a guy in the parking lot working on his car who saw what was happening and tried to stop us. In the process of this innocent man, who I see as a hero today, tried to stop us, my 16-year-old friend shot and killed him. So at the age of 14, I was charged with capital murder. Fresh out of 8th grade. I wasn't a bad kid. I grew up in a home where my mother, she was loving, she was very nurturing. The word nurturing means my mother cared, she was very compassionate. But my mother worked a lot. Ever since I was about your age, I remember getting out of school and my mother would be going to work. So I would be at home by myself with my older brother, who was about 4 years older than me. So we kind of grew up with no mom at home. I really don't know my dad. I grew up without my father. I've never been spanked by a man. I've never been disciplined by a man. I've never been hugged by a man. I've never heard a man say, I love you. I've never heard a man say, I'm proud of you. I had uncles. I had male cousins. But they wasn't around as well. So when my mother was at work, I watched television. When I turned off the television, I put on my headphones. Now, you guys listen to Pooh Shiesty. Yeah. We had Pooh Shiesty back in my day, but they was called NWA, right? So they was young guys who was rapping about what was going on in our communities. And so I listened to a lot of what y'all would call Pooh Shiesty, right? And those lyrics, those words, because my mother wasn't home, I didn't have anyone to explain what I was listening to, right? I just walked around listening to it. And while I was listening to it, the whole time I was feeling unloved because my father wasn't around. My mother wasn't at home. I was feeling unwanted because I wanted a father. I wanted some type of man to be in my life. And so because there was no man around, I felt like nobody wanted me. I couldn't explain this when I was y'all's age. I didn't know what reject, I didn't know how to articulate, or I didn't know how to say I feel rejected, right? So what I did, I came to school and I found a man like Mr. Wallace, and I would act out just to get his attention so he can pull me in the hallway and talk to me. I used school to get what I didn't get at home. And a lot of times they said I was acting bad, but I wasn't being bad. I wasn't being bad. I was just acting out what I feel, but I couldn't say how I felt. But I could show you in my behavior. But it was certain people, like Mr. Wallace, who could look past my behavior, who could look past my behavior and see the kid in me. Because I was doing things that grown folks would do, because I was seeing things that grown folks do, right? Children, you guys, you mimicking what you see, and you repeat what you hear. So it ain't really you. It ain't really you. So it's men like Mr. Wallace who would pull me to the side and say, hey man, you're better than this. Throughout my life, there was a lot of Mr. Wallaces. When I caught a murder case, I had to go away from my mother. I was sentenced to 12 years. I received a 12-year sentence at 14 years old. My 15-year-old friend, he died in a high-speed chase running from the police. My 16-year-old friend who pulled the trigger, he was sentenced to 75 years in prison. They was all tried as adults. So I grew up in the juvenile detention center with other children who had done horrible things. And let me just say this. Good people do bad things just as well as bad people do good things. Hurt people hurt people. Hurt people hurt people. So when you see people in your classroom, when you see people in the hallways, when you see people on the playground, and they seem like they're trying to hurt people, they're hurt too. That's why they're trying to hurt people. Right? So how do you know what's good? How do you feel when you do wrong? When you do something wrong, when you tell a lie, do you feel bad? If you do something wrong to somebody, do you say, I'm sorry? Not only do you say, I'm sorry, do you ask for forgiveness? That's how you know you're a good person.
Me?
It's because when you do wrong, you feel bad